Aloha, ladies and gentlemen. Let's open up that marketplace and get this video started. I'm your host, SprinkleBeard. We stream every day except for Sundays over on twitch.tv/SprinkleBeard from about 11 a.m. Eastern Standard Time to about 3 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Times kind of get messy, so it's best to join the Discord or Twitter. Our Twitter's down at the bottom there. Discord is over on our Twitch for ease of access for you. So today's video, we are going to be focusing on the final dungeon, and I intentionally saved this one for last, Spider. I saved this for last because of a couple of reasons. There's a bunch of different strategies for it, first and foremost, and some of them will work in the early game, and then as you get further in, you're going to have to change strategies. But some of the strategies for like the late game, they're not going to be very effective in the early game, or they're not going to make sense to use. So rather than teaching you, like what's currently the number one best strategy, and admittedly, I actually don't have it up and running myself. This is going to be the first dungeon that we do where I do not do Dungeon 25 because I am incapable of Dungeon 25. I actually haven't gotten there yet. So unfortunately, not being able to show you the worst case scenario, what I've decided to do is we're going to show dungeons 10, 15, and 20. Now, the reason that we're going to be doing these dungeons is that at stage 10 is the first place where you get 5-star gear, but Spider 15 actually has the highest drop rate of 5-star gear that you can get. So when you get to stage 10, that is like a massive threshold where you can stay at Spider 10 for a very long time, just farm up plenty of 5-star gear, and the stats that you will get from that 5-star gear will be massively impactful. So we want to really focus on stage 10 there. Then the reason that I've chosen 15 is that this is where the stage 10 strategy, in my opinion, starts to really fail. I was able to successfully keep up with this strategy through 15, and I think it was even 16, but like 16 was like my limit, right? Where the strategy we're going to be using for 10 just starts to fall off really, really hard. And then you need to switch over to the ColdHeart strategy, which is kind of the big one that everybody knows. When we are doing stage 20, we still employ the ColdHeart strategy. We will be showing, though, we'll talk over the concept of the stage 20 through 25. Some people I've heard only do it on stage 21 and higher. Take your pick, but it's an HP burn strategy. So we're going to talk over these three. So why do we want to do Spider? Why did I save it for last? The reason why is that you typically need very good gear from these other zones, or you need to have your champions ascended, or Masteries are going to help out a ton with Spider. There's so many Masteries that activate when you kill things or when things die, and in Spider Queen, something is dying almost every round. So that's the big reason, is that it's not necessarily by far the hardest dungeon. It's actually quite a simple dungeon, but having the champions built in a way to deal with how Spider is very different than like the whole rest of the game. It's the one swarm area of the game. The big reason that you want to go into Spider is that this is where you get rings, amulets, and banners. Now, understand, because of this is the only place besides, there's one other place, but it's so unreliable, and the bigger issue is that you're probably not going to get a blue ring, amulet, or banner from the campaign. It's the very last level in the campaign. You do have a chance when fighting the final boss of the game to get some type of accessory drop. Because the accessories in this game, we're going to have to show this off real quick, actually. Because the accessories in this game, first off, they're divided to rings, amulets, and banners. Each one is a different slot. We'll get into the details of the nitty-gritty of each one real quick. But they're also faction-based. This makes getting equipment that is very good for a very specific champion 20 times harder, because now first you need to be the right faction. Then, and like that's a 1 in 12, 1 in 14 chance of you getting the right faction. Secondly, then it has to be the right piece of gear, right? It has to be either a ring, amulet, or banner, depending on what your needs are. Then it needs to be the proper star, right? You want 5 and 6 star ideally. When you start off, you're going to be, taking anything because it's additional stats and that will be beneficial. But we will teach you best practices, right? Which ones will be better to keep and why. Then after the ranking of it, then you want the primary stat to be something very specific. And then after that, you need the substats to be something specific. So understand, this is the hardest gear in the game to obtain something that you want or need. And a lot of the times you're going to be using items like placeholders, or you might have certain items that are upgraded because you had nothing better. And this is what you're going to use for now. And then some things you're going to use and you're going to roll it up. And then the rolls, instead of this one landing on attack percentage, it's going to land on HP percentage. And depending on what you were doing with that character, this might be horrible and you might have to switch items, right? So these are definitely gears that you probably want to upgrade first before equipping and just have a general idea. Now, it varies champion to champion, what you're doing with the champion. And again, any stats are better than no stats. So we are going to super nutshell this, and then we're going to jump into the dungeon. When it comes to rings, understand that with rings, that they can only have primary stats on it. By primary, I mean HP, attack, and defense, and it's only those. So the main stat has to be a flat stat. Flat attack, flat defense, flat HP. This depends on you personally. Obviously, attack champions you would think want attack stat, but if they're dying all the time, that doesn't help you. So maybe having more defense, or if you have a bunch of healers on your team, you might want flat HP so that they're healing for more. It is a personal preference option. Overall, most people, including myself, kind of see defense as the best ring because it is damage reduction. The less damage you're taking, the less time you need to heal, the less, damage that you need to be putting out, because if your characters are surviving, it's no big deal. So defense, in my opinion, is kind of the best. HP, I would say, is kind of the next best, and then attack. I will say the caveat to this, though, is you might have a champion that is just meant to be a nuker, or you might have other ways of keeping them alive, such as like unkillable, block damage, stuff like that, or huge shields, where they don't really need the extra defense. And you can get away with, hey, I want my ninja to have an attack ring on him, right? So understand these rings are very personal preference. The best practice currently, though, is that when you are farming for rings, if you want the main stat to be attack, you want this substat to be an attack percentage for best practice, right? Because if you're already wanting to increase their attack, having a percentage increase to their attack as well is going to be beneficial. Typically, and I've already showed a ring that breaks this rule, you typically don't want an attack ring that has defense and then defense percentage on it. Yes, you might want defenses on that champion, but if that's the case, wouldn't you want just like a defensive ring with defense percentage to really hammer home that defense? Again, it's completely up to you how you want to have rings and whatnot, or how you roll them as well. So here I was rolling this ring and I was hoping for defense percentage, but it landed on HP. This isn't terrible, right? It's still a very usable ring. But ideally, I would really like an extra roll, one of the other 2 rolls that I'm going to get on this ring, to land on defense percentage. If none landed on defense percentage, I might not like this ring very much at all. Understand this is one of the most customizable pieces where it just really depends on what stats you want on a character. I would take the ring and take it as your shield and make it more defense oriented. Give your character some longevity and some bulk to them. So I would encourage defense or HP rings at first. Again, if you want a character to be like a super nuke, so like my Mashalad, for instance, hits ridiculously, but I actually went with HP percentage on him, and then the rolls landed on attack percentage. Not what I wanted, but the HP percentage, the HP here, and then the HP percentage down here does give him some decent bulk so that he's not super squishy and he doesn't just pop right away. This is that perfect of example of, you know, you might have to roll a couple of rings. I might find a ring like this, and because it's 6-star, maybe I want the extra HP and defense percentage, since these rolls are a little bit higher than up here. And if the rolls landed here, maybe I take the attack then. It just depends on what you want to do. Amulets. Currently, majority of people just say that the crit damage percentage is the be-all end-all, right? You want crit damage as the main primary stat on any amulet. I am running into more champions, or the game's getting better about creating more champions that do not rely on crit rate or crit damage. Or maybe you are building a champion and you do not care if they crit or not, right? Maybe their crit stat is really low and you're like, you know what? This champion just, you know, so rarely crits, and I care more about them surviving longer because of what I'm doing with this defensive champion. I want this defensive champion to constantly get off their defensive skills, and I don't care about anything else. So for the most part, we do want crit rate as the main stat on an amulet. However, it can be things like attack or flat defense. I've been lately experimenting with like flat defense. I think they can even be flat HP. Yeah, they can be flat HP as well. This would be better if you have a champion that like super scales or has really big shielding. So my Blind Seer, for instance, has a shield that scales off of her max HP. So I have given her a 6-star HP amulet. And then as you can see, the substats on it can roll resistance, accuracy. If the main stat is not crit damage, then the substat can be crit damage. And like vice versa for any of them, right? If it's the main stat rolls HP, the substats that can roll. However, the substats are all flat except for crit damage. Crit damage is the only percentage one that will roll. I don't know when you would want crit damage as a substat. If you want crit damage on a character, I would make the main stat, you know, crit damage. You're going to get a lot more bang for buck. It gets it to be about like 33% on a 5-star gear. So I would imagine 6-star might be like 40% maybe. I'm not sure. I haven't found any personally. The big thing is substat wise. If you have a character that has no debuffs, we absolutely must have resistance, right? That might be something difficult for you to come across. But it's definitely worth farming for. But most champions have a need for accuracy. So ideally you would want crit damage with a substat of accuracy, and resistance would be perfect. Understand, use what you get. When you're only getting like green artifacts, that's perfectly fine. Use those green artifacts because any stats in the slot is better than none. And then just slowly get gear that makes more sense for that champion. And you might have champions that are just playing with something that it's better than nothing. So here I chose a defensive amulet with high resistance on it. I did hope for the rolls and accuracy. It's not where the accuracy landed. But this is a perfect example of sometimes you just have to get a piece of gear that fills in that void for what you need. And if your character needs more accuracy or needs more resistance, this is an easy way to get those extra stats. Last but not least, we have banners. Now, banners have two big main stats that we're going to focus on, and we're honestly going to ignore the rest. I will touch on them gently, but typically you're either going to want accuracy, because if your character has debuffs, this is the biggest accuracy buff you can get on your character, unless you're willing to sacrifice your armor's primary stat for accuracy. Or it can be resistance. It's of course attack is resistance. So having resistance is just as good, right? Giving your character a huge resistance boost so that they're more likely to resist or block a debuff from being placed on them. This is one of the best places for you to get a huge resistance buff, especially if your character does not require accuracy. This is a great place to really, really bolster that resistance and make your character very hard to debuff. When it comes to substats, the king substat is obviously speed. What's nice is on these banners, we do have a lot of options. So it can be attack percentage, defense percentage, HP percentage, but speed would be the huge other big one, where if you find your right main stat, accuracy or resistance, with a speed substat, you're sitting real pretty. This banner was also just a great example of, I got just all percentage rolls and resistance. That is fantastic. That is fantastic. Whoever inherits this Shadowkin banner is going to be very, very happy. It's just going to be a bit for that. Likewise, too, maybe you're working on your hard Doom Tower teams. That's where resistance is actually going to become a little bit more important than accuracy, but that's more like super endgame goals. And typically your Great Hall, I don't know anybody who maxes out the resistance first, so it's going to be unlikely that you're trying to stack resistance. Be an interesting challenge run to see how far somebody can get by maxing out resistance on all their characters as early as possible. And just trying to play without being debuffed. Banners can have certain things like flat attack, flat defense, and flat HP. The only reason I kept this one is that because it is 6-star, it is attack with attack percentage as a substat. If I ever decide to make a campaign farmer, or if I just need somebody that hits really, really hard, and maybe I don't care about their accuracy. A good example of this could be Genson. Now, Genson does have an amazing skill that has a very high chance to get a defense down. And even though we want that majority of the time, what if I have a team comp where whenever I play with Genson, I always play with Madame Saris, and Madame Saris has a defensive down. Genson might not need to use his defensive down. I could use the rest of his kit that does not require accuracy, and having extra attack on it, having a bigger attack stat, and he already has a healthy 1553. So increasing the base value of that and increasing the percentage of that could get Genson up to some really terrifying numbers. This is where team comp really, really does matter with what you're doing and how you're equipping. Again, after this video, we are going to be doing a video talking about the different types of champions on how to equip them before we get into our champion review, because champion comps really, really matter. I personally don't think I would ever build Genson as just like a pure attacker, but I am saying it is possible. I like his defense down too much, and I find it very valuable, and then it means that when he's on a team, I don't have to worry about forcibly bringing Madame Saris, unless I then want her for the buff strip as well. But if I don't need the buff strip, Genson's kind of a bit faster. This cooldown is shorter than Madame Saris's, and Genson has a lot of turn meter increase in his kit, meaning he becomes more of a Gatling gun and can get off his defensive down much more frequently than my Madame Saris. My Madame Saris, though, if I need a fear to bring, or if I need buff stealing and buff removal, obviously she's going to be like 10 times better than Genson in that regard. So it just depends. Hey guys, welcome to the stream. Right now we're recording a video for YouTube. So we are going to jump here into the Spider's Den, and we're going to talk over the 3 different strategies. When you are first starting off here on the Spider's Den, I would say really take advantage of any affinity that you can. So if you have an affinity advantage, if you have a bunch of Force champions or Void when fighting stage 2 here, take advantage of that. If you have, Spirit champions, take big advantage over that. This is one of the things that makes Spider Queen slightly more difficult, is the affinity is going to matter tremendously for this beginner strat. But this beginner strat is a strategy that you want anyways for your dungeons. And then it's going to make your other dungeons like very consistent, because you'll at least have 1, maybe 2 champions that do this for all your other dungeons. And then that will help you get further in Spider. This is also where Void champions are really going to be some of your best friends. But specifically, the strategy we're talking about is Aoe Clear. So for anybody that's newer, AoE Clear stands for Area of Effect. It was coined back in the days of MMORPGs, but it's transferred into a lot of other games. So it just means big damage to everything, attack everything, right? So for stage 10 here, I'm going to deconstruct the current team that I have in place. And again, what we're focused on is any champions that would have, I would say, at least one, but ideally 2 AoE attacks. So for instance, here we're going to be using our Skull Crown, our Umbral Enchantress. Both of her attacks attack everything. I can kind of cheese Mashalad in here. I am going to use him. I feel like the Spiderlings are more resistant to fear, so do not depend on fear in this dungeon. We're going to bring Zargala, because Zargala has one attack that hits everything, and then she has another attack that can hit everything. And then I always want to either bring a defensive down or weaken, and Armina is actually very, very good in Spider. I am going to show, though, that having like one kind of just supporty character is very good, but defense down and weakens on this boss. Oh, we already have enough of that. Is very, very good. So you could bring in something like Gorgorob or Apothecary to help speed up your team. Speed down and turn meter burn is amazingly effective on this boss, and that should be the main focus over everything. Farrakhan the Fat team attacks for a long time were really broken on. It would literally cause the fight to bug out, so I wouldn't encourage that. So we're going to use Grush. I know that I'm bringing in 2 non-affinities. The point that I want to show is destroying everything on the map consistently. And this team has very little synergy. That is intentional. I did not design this team ahead of time. I should have actually looked at that before the video, but what's done is done. So, the Spider Queen, how she works, she's immune to all hard CCs, and she's immune to anti-healing, and receives less damage from poisons. This means that using a poison tactic is not effective against her. However, no, Gomi! It's got one of your pods. Drop it. You can't have it. Drop it. Hey. Drop. Sorry about that. She is not immune, and her Spiderlings are not immune to HP burn. Now, again, at this early stage, we're not going to take advantage of that. You could, though, because she does get a maximum of 10 Spiderlings. So, at the start of each round, we'll spawn 6 Spiderlings. Spawns 2 Spiderlings at the start of each enemy champion's turn, so that's our turns. Spawns 4 Spiderlings at the end of her own turn. So whenever she takes a turn, she's going to spawn 4. She can have a maximum of 10 Spiderlings at any time. Skavag consumes all remaining Spiderlings at the start of each turn. That's not technically correct, but whatever. If Skavag consumes Spiderlings, she will not consume them on the following turn. Skavag heals by 3% of her max HP for each Spiderling consumed, and permanently increases her attack percentage by 10%. So here is the big reason. This skill alone is why we're really focused on trying very hard. All right, you need to let go, sir. Thank you. Good boy. Good boy. I don't have anything to give you. I'm sorry. This is the big skill that we're trying to stop, is that if she cannot heal and she cannot increase her attack, this fight becomes significantly easier. Enfeeblement attacks all enemies, has a 70% chance of decreasing their turn meters by 30%. So here is at one of the dungeons as well, having resistance is very impactful. However, when we go on to our second strategy, which is very, very reliable, it's just very gear dependent. this skill means nothing to us, and then you can stay away from resistance again. If a target's turn meter is fully depleted, places a sleep debuff on them for 1 turn. This skill is actually very damning when it hits you and if it puts you to sleep. So this would be the first dungeon I would really, really encourage. Resistance is a very good stat for you to have. Or as you're working on this dungeon, that is the time where you need to understand, okay, I need to be careful. I need to be aware of her turn meter. Last but not least, attacks all enemies. Damage increases by 15% if the target has a poison debuff. So again, resistance is huge here. However, for the 2 strategies I'm going to name first, you probably actually don't need any resistance. We are going to focus on our speed, our crit rate, and crit damage on champions from every single affinity. And what we're going to do is just clear out as many spiderlings as we can. So here with Umbral Enchantress, I'm going to use her A2 first because her A3 blocks me out of using her other skills. But notice that if she has no little babies, if we're just constantly killing them off, we don't care what she does. She's not going to do a lot of damage. Her little babies are actually the ones that poison us. She actually never poisons us under any circumstance. And even if one of your characters doesn't kill them off in one go, understand that, you know, your next character's turn, they might do the job. But by having multiple AoEs, this is just a very good opportunity for you to constantly be nuking away the babies. We do not want champions, though, that get a reset after killing an enemy. And the reason why is that too often you'll kill off one spider, but she'll spawn 2 because your champion will get another turn again. And then you'll be stuck in this limbo of the spiderlings are filling the page, and that's not what we want. Unless you're trying to build up a wave for Skullcrown to kill everything, and then for her to get those passives from Masteries and be like, oh, okay, now she's, you know, at the maximum speed that she can get, plus 18 speed from killing all the babies. That would be the only reason that you maybe want to let the babies go. So there's Spider 10. Now we got 3 mystery shards. Understand that is very common to happen, that you'll get mystery shards, or I think you can even get bruise in here. Yeah, you can get bruise. Understand that's the frustrating thing about getting to stage 10, but if you can consistently clear stage 10, you will be in a very good position to be getting much better gear, and you can be stingy, right? Also, you're getting 4 to 5 star gear. You could easily keep any 4 and 5 star gear that has that proper main stat you want with the right substats, and you can just start equipping all of your characters. And it's very, very energy efficient at 12 energy. And again, stage 10, for some reason, the table right now has the highest drop rate of 5 star gear. So sitting here and just farming stage 10 until you get the gear on each champion is fantastic. I will warn you, though, you don't necessarily want to say like, oh, well, I got a defensive banner, I'm going to just put that on my Mashalad because it's better than nothing. Yes, it is better than nothing, but when you go to unequip it, it will cost you more silver. So be mildly cautious. But if you're like, I just want any banner on Mashalad, and then later I will come back and farm for accuracy, yes, and understand, to get an accuracy banner for the faction that you want, to have the right substats that you want for a character, is extremely difficult. This will be probably the longest grind for any player in the game. So here we're going to go to stage 15, and here I am going to take full advantage of the affinities, right? We cannot tolerate our champions not landing their debuffs against the Spider Queen, or not clearing the waves off consistently. If we are not clearing off those waves consistently, we are going to have a really hard time here. In this fight, the little baby spiderlings, they are fast and they place on poisons. So yes, you could do things like attacking all their turn meters with like Rosin Scarhide, or Armina, champions who have an A3 that depletes everything's turn meter. The thing is, they're probably going to get a turn no matter what. So the higher end strats go for freezing them all or stunning them all so that you stop them, like you're letting them get turns, but you're not letting them be active on their turns. And it's a very smart thing to do. But as we can see here, even on stage 5, we can still maintain this strategy of killing all the spiderlings. As you can see, her crit damage is not high enough, so she's no longer clearing out the baby spiders. This is where having just multiple people that can do these AoEs will start to clear out the spiders consistently. And yes, it works up to about stage 15. And it's at stage 15 here where I do feel like everything starts to fall off heavily, or it becomes harder for you as a player to consistently get these, to kill all of these in 1 to 2 turns. If you're not able to kill these baby spiders in 1 to 2 turns reliably, I would say that it's time for you to ditch this strategy, or you need to focus on getting your champions of that affinity, like again, 1 or 2 should have that a lot of crit rate and crit damage, and then any attack percentage that you can muster in there. And most of the time this will be attack champions. So it'll be very rare that it's a defensive champion. It can happen though. But here, Mashalad, he's kind of one of my glass cannons, so I know he's always going to be destroying. Grush just has really good AoEs. So I like Grush. I bring him into a lot of places I'm probably not supposed to. Here, because Umbral Enchantress locks herself out of other skills for 5 turns, she's actually quite bad here into Spider. She could potentially be good at higher end spiders because you could provoke all the spiders into attacking her. And then because she's unkillable, she could just tank every piece of damage as long as you can maintain that she doesn't die. That could be a very, very viable strategy. It's not best strategy though. Definitely freezing and stunning the babies is a lot better. But as you can see here, we've gotten her down to about half. I would say defense down is an absolute must on this boss. Weaken definitely substantially helps. I would definitely favor the defense down more than the weaken first though. Here I can use Zargala getting the benefit of killing a spider and then it activates a skill is another smart way to play these fights rather than just letting Zargala go straight after Spider Queen. I know a lot of players who this is the one fight that they consistently do manually just because the AI, trying to get your AI to do certain things becomes very problematic the higher up you get, or you know, you might need to make a different decision on each turn. So there, Skullcrown not wiping out all these babies is really problematic with her being at such a high turn meter. But thanks to Masteries, Zargala just depleted that turn meter with her A1. So it was the first time Zargala used her A1, which is up the support side of Masteries. But depleted that turn meter, and now Mashalad is going to wipe out majority of the spiders, meaning that I don't have to worry about her damage. I don't have to worry about her consuming all the baby spiders, right? As you can see, as long as you can keep the baby spiders under control, this fight is not particularly difficult. Hey Tom, how you doing? We're doing a YouTube video at the moment, so give me one. We need like 3 more minutes. We're gonna do one last spider, and then actually I need like about 5 more minutes. But there we go. Spider Queen 15 is dead, and as you can see, the AoE strategy still works till that point. I would encourage the other strategy, which is what we're going to talk about, and I'm going to showcase it on Spider 20. Now, Mashalad is still in Spider 20, so you're going to see how much more difficult the AoE strategy becomes the higher up you get, and it becomes very unreliable. So at 15, for me, that's what I would heavily encourage you abandon the AoE strategy. It is really just best for 10, and as long as you can farm Spider 10, you will be getting 5-star gear that you need for your characters that will work out plenty. But yes, eventually you will get down to like Spiders 13 and then 15, where AoE nuking will be very, very reliable. Again, what's great about the AoE strategy is as you're building up at least 1 or 2 champions that counter an affinity and attack everything, that will greatly help you out on any other dungeon. It's not just a spider dungeon champion. Literally, that champion will be very good for you in like Dragon as you're clearing the waves, to have 2 AoE nukers that help you get through the waves pretty consistently. Or just a general mindset of, okay, I need at least 2 AoE nukers. That helps me clear out the content. And then for like Dragon, the other 3 could be supports or defensive champions to help your party survive. So here, when we get to Spider 20, the strategy greatly changes. And I actually struggled very heavily with Spider 20, and only recently have I been able to successfully do Spider 20. So here we are going with the ColdHeart strategy. And for ColdHeart here and Royal Guard, both of these champions have an attack where they deal extra damage based upon enemy max HP. There are a couple of other champions in the game that do this, such as like Steelbound Bower, who's a Dark Elf, but I have never seen somebody use her yet. The other big thing is fully depletes the target's turn meter by 100% is the other really big reason that we like ColdHeart for this fight. And specifically 2 ColdHearts can do this. If I had a 3rd ColdHeart, I actually would use a 3rd ColdHeart over Royal Guard. Royal Guard, though, does have the perfect spider kit. He has an attacks all enemies and damage increases according to enemy max HP, so that's amazing. He has an attacks 4 times at random, but you can target the Spider Queen with this, and he has a high chance of decreasing her speed. This means the slower that Spider Queen goes, the easier it is to control her turn meter, which is stupidly amazing. And then his A1 has a decreased defense on it. So if your main character that decreases defense or weakens doesn't work, Royal Guard is kind of your backup. However, a defensive down is massively important for Spider Queen. And for me, for Spider Queen 20, it is complete necessity. You have to have that defensive down. If you can get both a defensive down and weaken, that will help. And that might be these 2 champions. In my case, Mashalad speeds up my team and increases their crit damage. And these 3 champions are so heavily based off their crit. That is what we're heavily focused on with Masteries. So when you go down the Mastery trees and you go down that offensive tree, all of them curve to the very bottom right at the end for just extra crit damage. The reason that this strategy doesn't work past Spider 20, and this strategy works as soon as Spider 10. However, you do need to have these champions geared up very well with like plus 200% crit damage to have this work well and quickly for you. So understand, you're going to be farming for that amulet. You might be using crit damage gloves with crit rate substats for you to move up. I'm actually really looking forward to when I can get 2 higher spiders that I might unequip 1, if not maybe both of my ColdHearts, because I don't mind them, but I won't mind replacing them. And I might be able to use their gear on other champions and get like my ninja back into an amazing spot, or build up somebody else like Zargala with crit damage, or Allure would really help out my Fire Knight significantly. So when it comes to Spider 20, ideally we would want our defense down character to go first. Now my Mashalad is just kind of built with my best of best gear, and he speeds everybody up, so I don't mind that he goes first. But ideally, Armina, I actually do want her faster for Spider 20 here. It does depend how much more I'll invest into her. It's funny, I just did all of her masteries, and that also greatly helped out my Spider Queen. So she's now going to use her AoE defensive down, and she's in a kit. Her gear set is the stun set. So she has an 18% chance to stun when attacking. So here, this spiderling got stunned. Here, this spiderling got stunned. This is going to give me amazing control over the battle. But as you can see, all of their turn meters are nearly filled up anyway. So it's quite terrifying. Here, I would recommend having your characters use their, big damage skill as frequently as possible. With ColdHearts, it's more about timing it out, because they do the turn meter burn as well with their attacks. So here I am going to use hers, even though this is not the perfect time, but just to show how much damage this does. But this attacks on a 4-turn cooldown, so ideally I want my second ColdHeart to wait 2 turns before using her giant attack. And hopefully, if I can get 2 turns here before the Spider Queen goes, that means her arrows off of, is half off of cooldown. And then those 2 can perpetually keep Spider Queen from ever attacking. Here, Armina is going to deplete the turn meter of all enemies by 20%. Even though I can't stun the Spider Queen, this is a great way for me to control the babies, and this baby right here on the left side has a turn meter that's definitely in that 20% range, where if I fully deplete it, that spider now gets stunned. That skill's not super amazing, but it's pretty amazing because it's a great counter turn, right? That spiderling just took its turn, and I got lucky that it got feared. It attacked, it failed, and then I could stun it in response, so it will then lose its next turn, which is amazing. Here for this strategy, when you kill off all the babies, using your giant attack that is based off of max HP, that is not the best time to use it. So right now there's only 4 spiderlings. I'm losing a lot of damage. So this is where it's better for you to really think about your turns. Here I could use this ColdHeart's A1 if I wanted to deplete the turn meter a little bit. I do not want to deplete the turn meter just yet, so we're going to hold off as long as we can. But here, it hasn't been 2 full turns yet, so I am going to have to use this ColdHeart's A1. I could try not to target her to let that turn meter fill up more. However, the way that I've played and how often I've played this, I'm used to using it to burn the turn meter. And there, of course, she resisted, which is terrific. Here, Armina has attacks one enemy, and she has a 35% chance to stun. Now, because of Masteries, I could choose to attack her to get in more damage, or I could fish for the stun on one of these little spiderlings. So maybe the spiderling who has the most turn meter, attacking them and fishing for that stun might be more beneficial. If all of these enemies were below 50% turn meter, I would have probably just attacked the queen and just had her get in some extra damage. However, I know that this team is based upon Royal Guard and the ColdHearts. They do plenty of damage for me. Mashallah there just did 90,000 to put this into perspective, right? So it's a good chunk of damage. But here, the next turn that my other ColdHeart gets, all the spiderlings are on the field. I would ideally want this turn meter to be much higher. At least 70%, I would say. This is up to you and knowing your speed of your champions and knowing how frequently they can go. I could easily go another turn here if I wanted to. However, I've worked on certain stats on these characters. I know how consistent they are now. But there is our next shot. So now when Royal Guard gets his AoE back up, my Spider Queen will be dead from how frequently I've done these Spider 20 attempts. But here you can see, Spider Queen has never gotten a turn. Not a single time has she been able to act on this. So this means that having a high speed and high accuracy is absolutely a must for Spider Queen. And then there, I finally lost my first champion. At this point, it doesn't matter. I have won this as long as she doesn't get a turn. If she got a turn and consumed her babies, I do lose this, for the record. But there we did 1,077,000 damage based upon all the baby spiderlings. Here, because this is defense, I would maybe keep a defensive amulet just in case I have a character that doesn't require crit rate or crit damage. I'm sorry, not crit rate, but let's say I'm building a character that I don't care about their crit rate at all. Therefore, I don't care about their crit damage. I would want the substats, though, to be like HP, accuracy, resistance, something like that to help with the bulk. So defense with a substat of attack, I don't know when I'm ever going to want that. So because of that, this is just junk for me. So we are going to talk about the last strategy that I do not have up and running yet. However, I do have the shards to make this strategy work. I now just need to 6-star the champion and ascend them, gear them up, and then do test runs of it. But for spiders 21 through 25, and I can't showcase this, but the strategy switches over drastically. You still use ColdHearts because they do enough damage, but their damage is reduced. But your goal is to do about, I think it's 40% of the boss's damage, health with your ColdHearts, and they will roughly do that much damage. But you switch over to champions that either have a more reliable stun, or like we did with like Umbral Enchantress, a very reliable provoke, or a very reliable freeze. And as we get higher up, where's my Achak, the Wanderin? This beautiful, one of my favorite aesthetic creatures in the game. He has an attack that can freeze all enemies. He gets a 90% chance to freeze all enemies for 1 turn whose attack is higher than their defense. And the spiderlings at 21 plus fill that requirement beautifully. So you have a good AoE freeze that you could freeze all the babies. You potentially could bring in either like a second Achak, which I think would be overkill. Or you could bring in somebody like Ninja if you had Ninja fully booked up, for those players who got Ninja during that event. The point though is we want a very, very reliable way to control the babies. We cannot ever let them get a turn. Then the secondary strategy that comes off of this is an AoE HP burn. Now in this case, I am getting the champion Drexthar Blood Twin. You can get him in the 3v3 arenas, and as you win, you can buy 1 shard at a time. So it takes you about 3 months of grinding the 3v3 arena to get a legendary defensive champion. But specifically, he has a 55% chance to place an HP burn debuff for 2 turns on the attacker when hit. This champion's resistance increases by 10 for every enemy under an HP burn, stacking up to 50. And then when you fully book him, we can take that 55% chance up to an 80% chance, which is just absolutely amazing and terrifying. Next, he has an attacks all enemies and has a 40% chance or eventually a 60% chance to provoke all enemies. So now he's provoking enemies who then attack him, who then get HP burns placed on them. This chance increases to 100% if the target is under an HP burn debuff anyways. Also places a 50% decreased attack debuff on the target if the provoke is placed. So this gives him amazing longevity. The fact that it becomes 100% if they're under an HP burn makes him amazing. Attacks 1 enemy 3 times, has a 30% chance of placing the HP burn by himself, right? Heals this champion by 20% of the damage inflicted if the target is under an HP burn. So he can help facilitate it. However, I don't think he is the best for placing HP burns. There's a lot of other champions that we could use. So champions like Mordecai, who a lot of players, including myself, slept on for a very long time. But he has a 75% chance to place an HP burn on all enemies and then increase the attack buff of all allies by 50% for 3 turns. This is like the perfect spider skill. What's even better is that this isn't an attack, so there's no chance for a weak hit to happen. It's just your accuracy versus your opponent's resistances. So getting a very high accuracy stat on Mordecai will be critical here. Then things like an AoE speed down or an AoE speed up for your team also are very, very good. So here, has a 75% chance of decreasing the turn meter of all enemies by 15%, and then fills the turn meter of all allies by 15%. So imagine that if you speed up your team, you slow down the enemy team, you're also freezing all the babies, and then your 2 ColdHearts are built in a way that they stop the Spider Queen from ever getting a turn. It's a full lockdown concept here. And then once you have an HP burn on all the babies, or you've done about that 40% of the Spider Queen's max HP, as each of the babies gets a turn, they're doing 3% damage to everything there. So if the Spider Queen exists, that's 1, plus the 10 babies, that's an additional 10, so 11, times 3, that's 33% HP every time they all get a turn. Your damage here doesn't even matter, right? It is just about getting everything frozen, keeping the Spider Queen from ever getting a turn. So you could use things like Allure to try to decrease her turn meter, or in the Sacred Order, I've heard about people just having 2 Armigers because of how common it is to get them, how easy it would be able to build them up. And then they just use their A1s to perpetually keep the Spider Queen from ever getting a turn. But the concept is that your champions are just freezing and controlling the fight. And then once all the HP burns are in place, you let things go for 1 turn, let everything thaw out. And then you would refreeze everything so that you're not taking damage. And then re-HP burn everything. Or a lot of the HP burns last for 2 turns. And there's a lot of champions that do HP burn. I just showed off Mordecai because he's kind of like one of the most obvious. The Skinwalkers now have Tunisia, who has a lot of HP burn based in her kit. There's probably another demon spawn, Sissia, I would assume. I actually don't know who Sissia's. Yeah, it has a 75% chance of placing an HP burn on all enemies for 3 turns. There's just a lot of champions that can do it. Having champions that can place 1 HP burn, I would be very cautious with. That's a very, very long strategy. It could work though, right? As long as all your puzzle pieces operate the way that they need to. But that is currently the meta strategy for 25, is having the babies frozen, HP burned, and then as they take a turn, they just tick a bunch of damage and cause 33% damage to everything. Then they refreeze everything and just stop the queen from ever eating the babies. And you kill her quite quickly. Unfortunately, I can't showcase that yet. However, I do have the final shards for my Drexstar Blood Twin. So the CVC coming up, I am going to crack him open during that and then start building him up at some point. So ladies and gentlemen, I hope this was very helpful for you. I know this was a longer video, but it is Spider Queen. There's a lot to talk about there, and there is a bunch of different strategies. If you guys find your own strategy and would like to be like, oh, have you considered this thing? Feel free to leave it down in the comment section below. We'll talk about it. Best of luck to you on Spider Queen. In all honesty, Spider 10 was surprisingly easy to beat. What was really nice is that you can use Force, Magic, and Void champions to very consistently clear this. And once you're consistently clearing 10, this is where you can get snobby if you want, right? You can just wait until you get 5-star gear, sell all the 4-star gear. And the added bonus is that the energy that you spend versus the money that you get from selling artifacts here, or the power spike you get from artifacts here, is so high. This is also super amazing for completing dungeon diver events. If anybody's ever wondering how do people clear dungeon divers, this is a very efficient way. Now, getting down to Spider 20 is a lot more efficient, or to like any dungeon 20 is more efficient. But starting out, Spider Queen 10 is the most reliable, and I would say is the best way for silver as well. If you need to silver farm, you know, you could set it on, if you get your team up and running perfectly, you could set this on auto, run your multi-battles, sell all 4-star gear, right? You're not going to care about it if you're running multi-battles. Keep the 5-star gear, and then you'll just have to look through your 5-star gear at some point. But guys, I hope this was helpful to you. If you have any questions or comments, leave them down below. Again, if you like the interaction and you want to come and ask questions or show off your champions, visit us over at twitch.tv/SprinkleBeard. And of course, as always, until that next time, ta-ta.